Women with big curves naturally draw attention, but there's more beneath the surface. They face constant judgment, navigate unwanted stares, and learn to stand tall in their power. Many know the difference between lust and love, and while they attract many, they choose few. Confidence, not curves, defines their true strength. There's something undeniable about the presence of a woman with a fuller figure. She walks into a room, and people notice, often without her saying a single word. It's not just about how she looks, it's about the energy she carries. The shape of her body might catch the eye, but it's her presence that holds attention. This kind of attention isn't always something she seeks. In fact, many women with big assets have learned from an early age that people often stare, comment, or form opinions, regardless of what they're wearing or how they carry themselves. Some may assume that the attention is always welcome or flattering, but it's far more complex than that. You see, commanding attention without trying is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can boost confidence. Society praises curves, celebrates hourglass figures, and places them on pedestals, from social media to music videos. This can give a woman the sense that she's seen, admired, even desired. But on the other hand, it can also feel like a burden. The attention is often so loud that it drowns out who she really is. People notice her body first, and sometimes only. They assume confidence, sensuality, or even arrogance, long before they hear her voice or understand her character. Because of this, many of these women develop a heightened awareness of themselves. They understand that the way they walk, the way they dress, or even how they laugh in public is being observed more closely than others. And this awareness doesn't necessarily come from a place of insecurity. It's more about self-protection and control. She knows how easily people can misinterpret her confidence for invitation. She knows how quickly admiration can turn into objectification. Still, the power of commanding attention can become a tool. It teaches her how to navigate space with strength. It pushes her to define her boundaries clearly and early. She learns to separate genuine connection from shallow interest. Over time, she becomes a woman who is not just seen, but felt. She can walk into a room and shift the energy without speaking, because her presence has weight. Her silence, her posture, her calmness, they all communicate something deeper. Not everyone has that kind of power, and certainly not everyone knows how to handle it with grace. So while the world may focus on the external, she knows that the real attention, the kind that matters, is rooted in how she carries herself. It's not just about a big backside. It's about a big presence. She's not trying to be noticed. She simply is. And that difference is everything. Women with fuller bodies, particularly those with noticeably big behinds, often face a unique and relentless set of stereotypes. These stereotypes are not just casual assumptions. They're deeply ingrained narratives that society has repeated over time, through media, pop culture, and even everyday conversations. People project entire personalities onto these women based on their shape alone. They're often seen as overly sexual, attention-seeking, high-maintenance, or even lacking depth. It's exhausting, and most of the time it's not even close to the truth. Many men, and even some women, assume that if a woman has curves, especially a prominent backside, she must want attention. She must love being stared at, complimented, or even approached in bold, sometimes disrespectful ways. There's this misguided idea that her body is a public invitation, a performance meant for others to enjoy. But the reality is, most of these women didn't ask for the attention, and they definitely didn't sign up for the assumptions that come with it. The moment a curvy woman posts a photo, walks into a room, or even wears something that fits her well, people start making conclusions. They assume she's trying to show off, that she must be overly confident or promiscuous, that she's easy to get, or materialistic. And what makes this even harder is that many of these stereotypes come without anyone taking the time to actually know her. It's surface-level judgment disguised as opinion. It's labeling without context. It's lazy thinking that reduces her to her body. Some men see her as a conquest. Others may pedestalize her for her appearance, but not respect her as a person. Even in professional settings, she might be underestimated, her intelligence questioned, her abilities overshadowed by her physical appearance. And for women like this, it becomes a constant balancing act. She must navigate the fine line between embracing her body and being taken seriously. She learns to be hyper-aware of how she presents herself, often minimizing parts of her personality or style to avoid feeding into the narrative others have already created about her. Yet, what most people fail to realize is that these women often carry a depth that goes completely unnoticed because of the noise of stereotypes. They've had to develop thick skin, strong boundaries, and a clear sense of identity. Many of them have learned to educate others through their actions, proving that yes, you can have a body that turns heads and a mind that changes lives. They've learned to push back against society's narrow definitions and create their own story. Dealing with stereotypes isn't easy. It's an invisible weight many women carry daily. But those who rise above it don't just survive, they evolve. They become more grounded in who they are. They learn to correct the narrative, not with explanations, but with presence, not with defense, but with undeniable grace and strength. Women with fuller figures, especially those with big behinds, tend to develop a heightened awareness of their bodies, not necessarily by choice, but because of the world's constant focus on them. From the moment they start to fill out, the reactions of others begin to shift. People stare longer, make unsolicited comments, or offer opinions about what is appropriate for their body type. It becomes nearly impossible to move through the world without being reminded, directly or indirectly, of how noticeable their body is. This constant feedback loop forces many women to become more conscious of how they carry themselves. Whether it's the way they walk, sit, or even stand, they're often thinking one step ahead. Is this dress going to attract unwanted attention? Is someone going to make a comment if I sit this way? Should I wear this outfit even though it fits perfectly because it might be too much in public? These aren't superficial thoughts. They're the product of years of observation, judgment, and internal negotiation. For many of these women, the goal isn't to hide, but to navigate a society that scrutinizes them more than others. This body awareness isn't always negative, though. Over time, it can lead to a deeper understanding of posture, presence, and confidence. A woman who's aware of how her body moves learns how to use it intentionally. She knows how to own her space, how to soften or strengthen her presence based on the setting. She becomes fluent in nonverbal communication, often without realizing it. Her awareness turns into a skill, and her confidence, when genuine, becomes magnetic. Still, there's a mental and emotional cost that comes with this hyper-awareness. It can be draining to constantly think about how you're being perceived. Many of these women have to carry the burden of other people's projections, their fantasies, assumptions, and even insecurities. And because of this, they often become more in tune not only with their own bodies, but with the energy of those around them. They can quickly pick up on discomfort, judgment, or objectification, and they learn how to respond in a way that protects their peace. There's also a layer of self-monitoring that other people might never notice. These women may hesitate to dance freely at events, laugh loudly, or lean into certain fashion choices, not because they lack confidence, but because they're tired of being misinterpreted. Their movements are often calculated, not to impress, but to avoid being misunderstood. And yet, despite all of this, many of them learn to love their bodies fiercely. They build confidence not because they're told they're beautiful, but because they've taken the time to redefine beauty on their own terms. Being body aware isn't about vanity. It's about survival, strategy, and eventually, self-love. These women don't just walk into a room, they navigate it. Every step, every glance, every pause is intentional, and behind that awareness is a woman who has learned how to turn society's spotlight into her own stage. Confidence, especially for women with big behinds, is not something that's handed to them just because their body fits into society's current definition of beauty. While the world may praise curvier figures, the journey to genuine confidence for these women is often layered, misunderstood, and earned through lived experience. Many people look at them and assume they must feel powerful all the time. They think attention equals self-assurance. But what most don't realize is that being noticed and being secure within yourself are two very different things. For many of these women, confidence is something they have to build, brick by brick. It doesn't magically appear the first time someone compliments their curves. In fact, the early attention they receive can often be more overwhelming than uplifting. Unwanted stares, hypersexualized comments, and constant assumptions about who they are based on how they look can create confusion, discomfort, and even shame. Imagine being praised for your body while simultaneously being judged for it. That contradiction alone can make it hard to feel truly confident. In those moments, confidence doesn't come from how others see them. It has to come from how they see themselves. That means learning to love their body, not because others desire it, but because they understand its strength, its uniqueness, and its value beyond appearance. It also means drawing clear boundaries, saying no to disrespect, and learning to walk away from attention that feels hollow or disrespectful. Confidence is built in silence, through private decisions, repeated affirmations, and choosing self-respect over external approval. It also comes from experience. Over time, these women learn what kind of energy they want to attract and what they will no longer entertain. They begin to spot the difference between someone who sees their worth and someone who just wants to enjoy their shape. They learn how to protect their energy, how to express their needs clearly, and how to show up as their full selves without apology. These lessons aren't taught, they're lived, and each one adds a layer to their confidence. Another important piece of the puzzle is self-expression. Many curvy women find that the path to confidence also involves reclaiming their right to dress, move, and speak freely without being reduced to a stereotype. They discover the power of wearing what they love, not what hides them. They embrace the way they walk, the way they carry themselves, and the way they take up space. Each choice to be unapologetically themselves, even when it feels uncomfortable, is a step toward real confidence. True confidence, then, is a process. It's built slowly through self-awareness, self-acceptance, and countless moments of choosing to believe in yourself, even when the world tries to define you by just your body. It's not loud, and it's not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like quiet strength. Other times it shows up as bold expression. But always, it's rooted in one thing: a woman who knows who she is, beyond what others see. For women with noticeably curvy bodies, especially those with big behinds, attention from men is almost a constant. From early adolescence, they learn that their physical appearance draws reactions, some subtle, others overt. But over time, they also learn something deeper and far more powerful: how to differentiate between genuine interest and shallow lust. That knowledge isn't instinctive, it's earned. It comes from being approached countless times, from conversations that felt one-dimensional, from compliments that were more about their body than their mind, and from learning to listen beyond the words being said. When a man is truly interested, his energy is different. He's curious about who she is, not just how she looks. He asks questions, listens attentively, and shows consistency in his actions. He isn't rushing to impress or control. He's there to connect. On the other hand, lust often reveals itself through urgency. It's in the way someone stares too long, compliments too early, or steers every conversation into suggestive territory. It's when the interest in her fades quickly, if she sets boundaries or chooses to slow things down. Women with fuller figures become keen observers of behavior. They've seen how some men pretend to care just long enough to get what they want. They know the signs of someone who is putting on a show versus someone who is truly present. And because their bodies have often been the focus of attention, they become especially skilled at detecting when that attention lacks depth. They don't fall easily for sweet talk or flattery. They've learned to ask, "Do you see me? Or do you only see my shape?" It's a lesson rooted in experience, sometimes painful. Being desired can feel flattering, but it can also feel empty when it's based solely on appearance. That's why these women often develop strong emotional filters. They don't just evaluate what a man says, they watch what he does, how he acts around others, and whether he shows interest in the parts of her that aren't on display. Does he care about her passions, her goals, her thoughts? Or is his engagement shallow and surface level? This discernment becomes a quiet power. While others may assume she's easily impressed or distracted by male attention, the opposite is true. She's highly selective. She knows how to enjoy admiration without letting it define her. She can appreciate a compliment without being swayed by it. She chooses carefully, and when she connects, it's with someone who brings more to the table than empty praise or physical desire. Knowing the difference between real interest and lust protects her. It allows her to keep her standards high, to avoid toxic dynamics, and to preserve her energy for relationships that are nourishing, not draining. It's not that she's guarded, it's that she's wise. And in a world where many still mistake desire for value, that wisdom makes all the difference. For women with big behinds, being sexualized is often an experience that starts long before they even understand what that word truly means. It's not something they invite, it's not something they plan for, but the moment their body begins to develop, it becomes a topic of conversation, a source of attention, and often a magnet for unsolicited opinions. They can wear a simple outfit, walk into a room with confidence, or just exist in a public space, and still be reduced to their curves. This unwanted attention shapes how they see themselves and how they move through the world. What many people fail to realize is that sexualization doesn't always come from a woman's actions. It often comes from the projections of others. A tight pair of jeans isn't always meant to turn heads. A dress that hugs her body isn't always an invitation. Sometimes, it's just what fits her figure best. But society rarely makes that distinction. Instead, she's judged as if every fashion choice is a statement, every movement is flirtatious, and every smile is an invitation. This constant misinterpretation can feel suffocating. The most frustrating part is the lack of control. She could be covered from head to toe, speaking professionally, or simply minding her business, and still be sexualized. It's not about what she does. It's about what people see when they look at her. And unfortunately, what they see is often filtered through narrow-minded stereotypes, that she's overly confident, seductive, or seeking male attention. These assumptions are damaging, especially when they're far from the truth. Over time, many of these women develop a complicated relationship with their own bodies. They may start second-guessing how they dress, how they walk, or even how they speak. Some might tone down their style, avoid certain places, or remain quiet in social settings, not because they lack personality, but because they're trying to avoid being misread. And yet, even when they do everything right, the sexualization doesn't always stop. This experience also creates emotional and psychological exhaustion. Being constantly objectified makes it harder to feel safe, understood, or truly respected. It can interfere with professional growth, personal relationships, and self-esteem. She begins to wonder if people genuinely value her for who she is, or if they're only drawn to what she looks like. That kind of doubt doesn't fade easily. It lingers, affecting how she interacts with others and how she sees her own worth. And yet, despite all of this, many women with curvy bodies still choose to stand tall. They reclaim their narrative, one decision at a time. They wear what they want, say what they mean, and create boundaries that protect their peace. They learn to separate how others see them from how they see themselves. They stop apologizing for their shape and start owning their space with pride. Because at the end of the day, being sexualized isn't a reflection of who they are. It's a reflection of how society has been conditioned to view them. There's a persistent and harmful stereotype that curvy women, especially those with big behinds, are somehow easy or more sexually available simply because of their body shape. This misconception has been reinforced for decades by music, media, and pop culture, often portraying full-figured women as hypersexual or lacking discretion. But this belief couldn't be further from the truth. Having curves does not determine a woman's values, her self-worth, or the standards she holds for herself. And yet, many of these women are constantly having to prove otherwise. For curvy women, attraction is never in short supply, but attention is not the same as connection. And they know that. They're often approached, flirted with, complimented, and yet that doesn't mean they're flattered by every advance. In fact, many have become extremely selective about who they allow into their lives. They've seen how easily people become infatuated with their appearance but show no interest in their mind, their ambitions, or their boundaries. That kind of superficial energy doesn't impress them, it annoys them. The idea that physical appeal equals promiscuity is not just incorrect, it's insulting. It reduces a woman's entire identity to a stereotype and ignores the reality of who she is beyond the physical. It assumes that because men desire her, she must desire every man. It suggests that her value is tied to how available she makes herself, rather than how intentional she is with her choices. These assumptions are deeply damaging, and curvy women often bear the brunt of them in dating, in friendships, and even in professional spaces. In truth, many women with curves have incredibly high standards, not because they think they're better than anyone else, but because they've learned to protect their peace. They've dealt with enough shallow compliments, empty conversations, and disrespectful advances to know what they don't want. They're not seeking validation, they're seeking alignment. They look for depth, respect, intelligence, and emotional maturity. And most importantly, they know their worth isn't tied to their ability to please or entertain. Curvy women are often misunderstood because people fail to separate confidence from availability. A woman who loves her body, wears what makes her feel beautiful, and walks with pride isn't doing it for attention. She's doing it for herself. She doesn't owe anyone access, approval, or explanation. Her openness, her laughter, her presence, they're not signs of flirtation. They're signs of freedom. It's time we move beyond the tired narrative that a curvy body equals easy access, because the truth is, many of these women are some of the most emotionally intelligent, self-aware, and intentional people you'll meet. They don't fall for surface-level charm. They know the games, and they choose not to play them. What they want is real, respectful, and reciprocal, and they won't settle for less, no matter how many eyes are watching. Women with curvy bodies, particularly those with big behinds, often attract attention wherever they go. It's not just because of their looks, it's because their presence is magnetic. They stand out in a crowd, sometimes without even trying. Strangers glance, compliments are frequent, and DMs are rarely empty. But what people don't always understand is that being desired by many doesn't mean choosing just anyone. These women have learned that attention is cheap, but connection is rare, and they don't settle simply because options exist. For many curvy women, early experiences taught them to recognize the difference between admiration and genuine interest. They've been flattered, objectified, praised, and misunderstood all at once. They know what it's like to be pursued for the wrong reasons, to be seen as a fantasy rather than a full person. That repeated pattern sharpens their instincts. Over time, they become more intentional about who they allow into their world. They stop entertaining shallow interest and start paying attention to consistency, depth, and respect. Yes, they attract people, but that doesn't mean they're impressed easily. In fact, the more attention they receive, the more selective they become. They're not interested in being someone's trophy or temporary excitement. They want more, and they've earned the right to be choosy. They're looking for emotional intelligence, clear communication, maturity, and someone who sees them beyond their body. Flattery might open a conversation, but it's character that holds their attention. Some people misunderstand this mindset and label them as picky or too proud. But what those critics often overlook is the emotional labor that comes with constant attention. When your body is a focal point, you learn to guard your heart. You become skilled at reading between the lines, spotting red flags early, and filtering out those who approach with the wrong intentions. It's not arrogance, it's self-preservation. It's knowing your worth and refusing to lower your standards just to be wanted. Settling is never an option for these women. Not because they're chasing perfection, but because they understand peace. They know what it feels like to be pursued for appearances alone, and they're no longer interested in that kind of empty validation. They want someone who values their presence, supports their growth, and loves them in all their complexity. Not just someone who's captivated by their curves. So, they wait. They invest in themselves. They build their lives around purpose, not pressure. People often assume that women who attract many must be in constant relationships or always entertaining someone, but the truth is, many of these women are alone by choice. They'd rather be single and whole than partnered and misunderstood. They don't crave attention. They crave alignment. And they understand that their ability to attract doesn't mean they owe anyone access. So while they may turn heads in every room they enter, the only ones they let close are those who've proven they deserve to be there. In a world that so often defines women by their appearance, especially those with curvier figures, it's important to remember that there is far more beneath the surface. These women are not just bodies. They are minds, souls, stories, and strength. While they may attract attention effortlessly, they've had to navigate judgment, stereotypes, and constant assumptions. They've learned to walk with grace under pressure, to filter out noise, and to define their value on their own terms. Confidence was never handed to them. It was built, tested, and earned. And while many may try to reduce them to their shape, they continue to rise above it, demanding respect and choosing wisely. Because at the end of the day, a woman with curves knows who she is, and she won't settle for anything less than what she truly deserves.